He was the most feared man in the city, a crime lord who could end lives with a glance and build empires on blood-soaked ground. But the one person Luca Romano couldn't command, couldn't protect, couldn't reach, was his own daughter. For 5 years, Isabella hadn't spoken a single word, hadn't whispered his name, hadn't given him the absolution he desperately craved. The most expensive therapists in Europe had called her silence permanent. But then came an ordinary evening at an exclusive hotel restaurant, and a clumsy waitress named Francesca. Risking everything to lean close to the silent girl, she didn't serve the wine. She whispered a name that had been buried with the dead. What happened next didn't just shatter the careful facade of the Romano Empire. It brought a mafia boss to the edge of madness and unearthed a betrayal that would ignite a war within his own family. Before we begin, tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I'm responding to everyone. The Grand Bellini Hotel restaurant was where power dined in hushed tones, where deals worth millions were sealed over aged wine and rare cuts of meat. At table 4, Luca Romano commanded the space like a dark monument, tattoos crawling up his neck, rings glinting on his fingers, an empire's worth of violence contained in his perfectly tailored suit. Beside him sat Isabella, 15 years old and beautiful in her silence, her face an emotionless mask that had haunted her father for 1,225 days. The room hummed with the casual conversations of the untouchable. No one noticed the new waitress with her hair pulled back too tight, hands trembling slightly as she approached the table. No one saw the moment her eyes locked onto the girl. No one heard the sharp intake of breath before she leaned down, lips barely moving, as she whispered a single word that hadn't been spoken in 5 years. Chiara. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. Isabella's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes, those dead, distant eyes, suddenly blazing with recognition and terror. Luca Romano, the man who had stared down assassination attempts without flinching, shot to his feet, both hands clutching his head as if trying to hold his fracturing world together. The careful control he'd maintained for half a decade exploded in that single moment of his daughter's raw, visceral reaction. The waitress stood frozen with her tray, knowing she had just crossed a line that men had died for crossing. But in her eyes wasn't fear, it was purpose. She knew something about the girl's silence, something about the night that had stolen Isabella's voice. And Luca Romano, watching his daughter shake with the first real emotion she'd shown in years, realized that this stranger in a white shirt held the key to a locked room he'd been trying to open since the night his world burned down. The silence in the restaurant was no longer respectful. It was the silence before thunder, before violence, before truth. And in that moment, every person in the room understood they were witnessing the beginning of something that would reshape the Romano family forever. The moment shattered like glass. Luca's hand shot up, a single gesture that meant everything in his world, and 2 men in dark suits materialized from the shadows near the bar. They moved with the efficiency of predators, closing the distance to Francesca in 3 strides. "Wait!" she started, but her voice died as iron fingers clamped around her upper arms. The diners looked away. They always did. In establishments like the Grand Bellini, survival meant selective blindness. "The back exit," Luca said, his voice low and lethal. He was already moving toward Isabella, blocking her view with his body, one hand reaching for her shoulder. She flinched, actually flinched, and something cracked further inside his chest. "Take her to the car, not a mark on her." "Not yet." Francesca's feet barely touched the marble floor as they hauled her through the kitchen. Chefs froze mid-motion, knives suspended over cutting boards, eyes fixed on empty air. The steel door to the alley crashed open, and suddenly she was breathing the cold January night, being shoved toward a black SUV with tinted windows that looked like a hearse. "Please," she gasped, finding her voice as panic clawed up her throat. "I just need 5 minutes with her. 5 minutes and I'll tell you everything." The men said nothing. They were extensions of Luca's will, nothing more. The door opened. They pushed her inside onto leather seats that smelled like expensive cologne and old violence. One man climbed in beside her, the other took the driver's seat. The engine purred to life, and they waited. 3 minutes passed in suffocating silence. Francesca's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd known this was a possibility, had prepared herself for it, but preparation and reality were different countries. Through the tinted window, she could see the restaurant's back entrance, could imagine Luca inside calming his daughter, paying the bill, maintaining the fiction that nothing had happened. Then he emerged, Isabella's hand locked in his, and Francesca's breath caught. Even from here, she could see the girl was trembling, could see Luca's jaw clenched so tight it might shatter. He opened the door of a second SUV, helped Isabella inside with a gentleness that seemed impossible from hands that had broken bones, then turned toward Francesca's vehicle. When he climbed in, the temperature dropped 10 degrees. He didn't look at her. Not at first. He stared straight ahead, hands curled into fists on his thighs, tattooed knuckles white with tension. When he finally turned, his eyes were black holes, empty of everything except a rage so controlled it was more terrifying than screaming. "You have 30 seconds to tell me who the fuck you are," he said quietly, "before I put a bullet in your knee and ask again." Francesca met his gaze, forced herself not to look away, even though every instinct screamed to submit, to cower. "My name is Francesca Bianchi." She watched the name hit him, watched recognition flicker, then confusion, then something that might have been horror. "Sophia's sister." Her voice didn't shake. That surprised her. "Your wife's sister." Sophia didn't have a sister, but his voice had lost its certainty. "She did. She had me, and I was there the night she died." Francesca leaned forward, desperate now. "I was there, Luca, in the house. I saw what happened, and so did Isabella." His hand moved faster than thought, slamming into the seat beside her head, close enough that she felt the displacement of air. "Don't you fucking say her name." "Chiara," Francesca interrupted and watched him freeze. "That's what Sophia called her. That's what I called her when I used to read her stories and braid her hair and sing her to sleep, before you made us disappear." The silence that followed was different, fragile, dangerous. "Let me see her," Francesca whispered. "Let me see Chiara, and I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you why she stopped speaking. I'll tell you what she saw. I'll tell you who really killed your wife." Luca stared at her for an eternity, compressed into seconds. Then he pulled out his phone, typed a single word, and the convoy began to move into the night, toward answers that would destroy everything he thought he knew. The Romano mansion rose from the hillside like a fortress, all stone and iron and secrets. Francesca was pulled from the SUV and marched through corridors lined with oil paintings and marble statues that probably cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. The beauty felt obscene, like lipstick on a corpse. They brought her to a study that smelled of leather and cigar smoke. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city lights below, a kingdom Luca ruled from the shadows. He was already there, standing with his back to her, one hand braced against the window frame. He'd removed his jacket. His shirt was rolled to the elbows, revealing more ink, more history written on skin. "Leave us," he said, without turning. The security melted away. The door clicked shut. They were alone, and somehow that was more terrifying than the guns. "Sophia Bianchi," Luca said finally, his voice hollow. "Born in Napoli. Parents dead in a car accident when she was 19. No siblings, no family. That's what she told me." She lied. Francesca moved closer, slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. She lied because that's what our handlers told her to do. We were in witness protection, Luca, both of us. Different identities, different lives. He turned then, and his face was a landscape of devastation. Witness protection from what? From the people our father testified against, the Calabresi family. She watched understanding dawn in his eyes. Yes, that Calabresi family, the one your organization helped destroy 15 years ago. Sophia was Elena Rossi then, and I was her little sister, Francesca. We watched our father get executed in our kitchen for being a rat. We were 11 and 8 years old. Luca's jaw worked. She couldn't. That was the deal. Complete severance from the past. New names, new histories, new lives. Francesca's voice cracked. But then she fell in love with you, and suddenly she had something worth dying for again. So she took the risk. She kept me close, hired me as the nanny, told you I was a friend from her fictional past. And for 5 years, we had something beautiful. We had a family. Until someone found out. Luca's voice was barely audible. "Until someone found out," Francesca echoed. "That night, 5 years ago, when the fire started. It wasn't random. It was an execution. They came for Sophia because someone discovered who she really was. But Chiara saw them. She was supposed to be asleep, but she'd come downstairs for water. And she saw the man who started the fire. She saw him kill her mother. Luca's hand found the desk, gripping it like it was the only thing keeping him upright. "Why didn't you come forward? Why disappear?" "Because I was terrified. Because I thought they'd come for me next, and for her." Francesca's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. "I ran like a coward. I went back into hiding, changed my name again, tried to forget. But I couldn't. I couldn't leave that little girl drowning in silence while the man who killed her mother walked free." "What man?" The words came out like gravel. "Give me a name." "Not until I see her." Francesca stood her ground. "Not until I know she's okay, that you haven't broken her completely, with your guilt and your distance and your inability to see that she's not Isabella, your perfect, silent, broken doll. She's Chiara, she's Sophia's daughter, and she's trapped inside her own head because she's too terrified to speak." The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Then Luca moved to the door, opened it, spoke quietly to someone in the hall. Footsteps approached, small and hesitant. And then she was there, the girl with her mother's eyes, standing in the doorway in pajamas too expensive to cry in. Francesca's breath left her in a rush. "Hello, little star," she whispered in Italian, using Sophia's pet name. "It's Zia, Franci. I came back for you." And for the first time in 5 years, Isabella's lips moved, forming a single, silent word that Luca would have given his empire to hear. Zia Isabella moved into the room like a ghost, and Francesca's heart shattered at the sight of her. The girl had Sophia's cheekbones, Sophia's dark hair, but her eyes were windows into somewhere cold and far away. She stopped 3 feet from Francesca, close enough to remember, too far to touch. "Can she sit with you?" Luca's voice was rough, uncertain in a way that probably never happened in his world of absolutes. Francesca nodded, not trusting her voice. She settled onto the leather sofa, and after a moment's hesitation, Isabella folded herself into the opposite corner, knees drawn up, making herself small, protecting herself, always protecting herself. "I'm going to tell your father what happened that night," Francesca said softly, speaking to Isabella, but looking at Luca. "The night we lost your mama. You don't have to stay, little star. You don't have to hear this again." Isabella didn't move, didn't speak, but her eyes, those haunted, hollow eyes, fixed on Francesca with an intensity that said, "Tell him everything." So she did. It was August 15th, Sophia's birthday. You'd thrown her that party, Luca. The whole garden lit with lanterns, champagne, music. You gave her that diamond necklace. Francesca's voice steadied as she slipped into the memory. You left around midnight for a meeting. You kissed her goodbye at the door. I remember because she smiled at me after. Said she'd finally found a man who made her feel safe. Luca flinched. We put Chiara to bed around 1. Read her 3 stories because she kept asking for just one more. Sophia sang her the lullaby, the one about the little bird who flew too far from home. "Do you remember that song, Little Star?" Isabella's fingers curled tighter around her knees. We went to bed. I was in the guest wing. Sophia in the master suite. Around 3 in the morning, I woke up to smoke. Not alarm smoke, thick, chemical smoke, the kind that means accelerant. I ran toward Sophia's room and found the hallway engulfed. I couldn't get through. Francesca's voice cracked. I tried, God, I tried. But the heat. Where was Isabella? Luca interrupted, his face carved from stone. I thought she was in her room. I ran there next, kicked the door open, but her bed was empty. I panicked. I searched everywhere I could reach, screaming her name. But the smoke, I couldn't breathe, couldn't see. I thought she was already gone. Francesca looked at Isabella, whose eyes were now swimming with tears that wouldn't fall. But she wasn't in her room, was she, little star? She'd gone downstairs for water. She was in the kitchen when the men came in through the terrace doors. Luca's hands clenched into fists. Men? Plural? 3 of them. But only one mattered. The one who went upstairs with the gasoline. The one who locked Sophia's door from the outside. Francesca's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Chiara was hiding in the pantry. She saw him come back down, saw him check his phone, saw him laugh while the ceiling above them started to burn. And then Isabella made a sound. Not a word, not quite a whimper, but something raw and animal that made both adults freeze. Then he saw her, Francesca continued, her own tears finally breaking free. He opened the pantry door and found a 7-year-old child in princess pajamas staring at his face. And instead of killing her, he crouched down and told her exactly what would happen if she ever told anyone what she'd seen. He said he'd come back for her. He said he'd make her burn the way her mama burned. He said he'd know if she spoke because he was always watching. Description, Luca bit out. Give me something. She was 7 and traumatized, Luca. She gave me fragments, tall, dark hair, expensive suit. Francesca paused, meeting his gaze, and a spider tattoo, right here. She touched the side of her neck. Black widow with red on the back. She said it looked like it was crawling up to eat his ear. The color drained from Luca's face. You know who it is, Francesca said. Not a question. Luca's silence was answer enough. Luca stood frozen for 3 heartbeats, his mind racing through files of faces, bodies, ink. Then he moved to his desk with predatory purpose, yanking open the bottom drawer and pulling out a leather-bound album. Not photos of family vacations, but surveillance shots, dossiers, the machinery of his empire made flesh. How recent was the tattoo? His voice was surgical, stripped of emotion. Fresh that night. She said it looked new, still red around the edges. His fingers flew through pages, past faces of soldiers and associates and enemies. 5 years ago. August. Who was close enough to know about Sophia, to have access to the house, to walk away from a murder without suspicion? Isabella shifted on the couch, and Francesca instinctively reached for her hand. This time, the girl didn't pull away. Luca's phone appeared in his hand. He dialed without looking, eyes still scanning the album. Marco. I need security footage from August 15th, 5 years back. The house, the grounds, the gate logs, everything. A pause. I don't give a fuck what time it is. 30 minutes or you're out. He ended the call and kept flipping pages. Then he stopped. His entire body went rigid. What? Francesca leaned forward, trying to see. Luca's finger rested on a photograph of a man in his 40s, handsome in a sharp-edged way, dark hair slicked back, standing beside Luca at what looked like a formal dinner. In the photo, the man's neck was clean, no ink visible. Matteo Conti, Luca said, his voice hollow. My underboss, my right hand for 12 years, the man who helped me build this empire from nothing. Does he have? He got a tattoo around that time. I remember because he showed up to a meeting with his neck bandaged. Said he'd had some ink done. When I saw it later, it was a lion. Bold, aggressive. Very Matteo. Luca's jaw clenched. But you can cover a spider with a lion. The size would work. The placement matches. Francesca felt ice slide down her spine. You're saying your second-in-command murdered your wife? I'm saying it makes sense. Luca slammed the album shut. Sophia and I kept our relationship private, initially. Only my inner circle knew about the marriage, about where we lived. Matteo was one of 5 people who had the security codes to that house. He began to pace, a caged predator working through the angles. And after the fire, he was the one who pushed hardest for me to move on, to send Isabella to boarding schools, to let her heal away from the trauma of the city. He wanted her gone. Because she's a witness. Because she's a witness who might speak someday. Luca's hands curled into fists. Fuck, he's been waiting. All these years, he's been waiting to see if she'd break her silence. That's why he stayed so close, so loyal. He's been watching her, watching me, making sure the secret stayed buried. Isabella made another small sound, and both adults turned to her. She was staring at Luca's phone on the desk, her face pale as death. What is it, little star? Francesca asked gently. The girl's lips moved soundlessly. Then she reached out with one trembling finger and pointed at the phone. Luca understood first. He pulled up his contacts, scrolled to Matteo's profile picture, a recent shot from a charity gala, Matteo in a tuxedo, smiling like he owned the world. He turned the screen toward Isabella. She recoiled like he'd shown her a snake, scrambling back on the couch, hand flying to her mouth. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps, and her eyes, those dead, distant eyes, blazed with 5 years of trapped terror. That's confirmation enough, Francesca said quietly. Before we continue, my ex-wife said I wouldn't be able to meet 2K subscribers. I need you all to prove her wrong. Luca's phone buzzed. A text from Marco. Footage compiled. Sending now. But Luca was already moving toward the door, his face transformed into something ancient and merciless. Stay here. Lock the door behind me. There's a panic button under the desk. Red switch. You hit that! The whole house goes into lockdown." "Where are you going?" He paused in the doorway, and when he looked back, Francesca saw the man who'd built an empire on violence and fear. "To check if my right hand still has his ink," Luca said, "and if he does, to cut off a lot more than that." Luca made it 3 steps down the corridor before the gunfire started. The first shots came from the east wing, sharp cracks that shattered the mansion's funeral silence. Then the windows exploded inward in a symphony of breaking glass, and suddenly the air was full of bullets and screaming staff and the acrid smell of gunpowder. He was moving before conscious thought, his weapon drawn from the shoulder holster beneath his shirt. He kicked the study door open. "Get down!" Francesca had already pulled Isabella to the floor behind the desk, her body covering the girls. Good instincts. Survival instincts. "How many?" Francesca's voice was steady despite the chaos. "Too many." Luca hit the panic button, and steel shutters began grinding down over the windows, but they were too slow, too late. Shadows moved in the garden, professionals advancing with military precision. 6, maybe 8. This wasn't a probe. This was an execution squad. Matteo knew. Somehow, he fucking knew. "The tunnels," Luca said, already moving to the bookshelf on the west wall. His fingers found the hidden switch, and the entire unit swung inward, revealing a passageway that smelled of earth and old stone. "Built during Prohibition, runs half a mile to the old carriage house." More gunfire erupted closer now, in the main hall, voices shouting commands. The security team was engaging, but they were outnumbered and caught flat-footed. Luca had gotten comfortable, gotten sloppy, had let 5 years of false peace make him vulnerable. Francesca hauled Isabella to her feet, and they plunged into the darkness. Luca followed, pulling the bookshelf closed behind them. Emergency lights flickered on, weak yellow bulbs every 20 feet, casting more shadow than illumination. They ran. Isabella's breathing was sharp and panicked, her hand locked in Francesca's like a lifeline. Behind them, muffled by stone and earth, the battle raged. Luca heard the distinctive pop of flashbangs, the heavier boom of his security team's shotguns. Good men dying because he'd been blind to the viper in his nest. The tunnel stretched endlessly, sloping downward and then up, twisting through bedrock that had stood for centuries. Luca's phone buzzed insistently. He ignored it. No one he trusted would be calling right now, which meant every call was either dead men or the enemy. They emerged in the carriage house, a converted garage that held his collection of vintage cars. Luca went straight for the Range Rover, the one with bulletproof glass and run-flat tires. Keys were already in it. He'd learned long ago to keep exit strategies primed. "Get in. Back seat, both of you. Stay low." The engine roared to life, and Luca reversed through the closed garage door, wood splintering around them. The night air hit them cold and sharp. Behind them, the mansion was lit up like a war zone, muzzle flashes visible in a dozen windows. Luca gunned it down the service road. No headlights, navigating by memory and moonlight. 200 yards. 300. Then the access road, and the main gate was ahead, still miraculously closed. The guard booth empty. The gate was reinforced steel. The Range Rover hit it at 40 miles per hour. Metal screamed. The windshield spiderwebbed but held. The gate buckled, twisted, gave way. They were through, onto the main road, and Luca finally hit the headlights and accelerated hard. In the rearview mirror, Isabella was curled against Francesca, shaking silently. Francesca stared back at him with wide eyes that held too much understanding. "He tried to kill her," she said. "Tonight. Right now, because I came back. Because you made him realize she might speak." Luca took a turn too fast, tires screaming. He's been patient for 5 years. But patience has limits. Where are we going? Somewhere he doesn't know about. Somewhere no one knows about. Luca's mind raced through options, safe houses, loyalties. Who could he trust when his right hand was a murderer? My uncle's old hunting cabin, 2 hours north, off-grid, defensible, stocked for siege. His phone buzzed again. This time he looked. Matteo Conte, Luca answered on speaker. You should have let it stay buried, Luca. Matteo's voice was silk over razor blades. The waitress was a mistake. The girl was always a mistake. But you I actually regret. The line went dead. Luca pressed the accelerator to the floor, and they disappeared into the night with a ghost from the past, a silent witness, and the certain knowledge that the war had finally come home. The cabin appeared out of the darkness, like something from a fairy tale, all rough-hewn timber and stone, nestled in a clearing surrounded by pine trees that whispered secrets to the wind. Luca killed the engine and sat for a moment, listening. Only forest sounds, no pursuit. Not yet. We're clear for now, he said, though they all knew it was temporary. Matteo had resources, contacts, eyes everywhere, but he'd need time to mobilize, to track them. Time was the only currency they had left. Inside, the cabin smelled of cedar and disuse. Luca checked the perimeter, while Francesca got Isabella settled on the worn leather couch near the stone fireplace. The girl was still shaking, her silence now a physical presence in the room, something you could almost touch. I'll get a fire going, Luca said, needing something to do with his hands before they started shaking too. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind the crushing weight of what had happened. His home invaded, his people killed. 5 years of carefully constructed stability obliterated in minutes. He built the fire methodically, stacking kindling and logs with the precision of a man trying not to fall apart. Behind him, he heard Francesca moving around the small kitchen, finding supplies, boiling water for tea. Domestic sounds that felt absurd against the backdrop of assassination attempts and buried traumas. Come here, little star, Francesca said softly. Let's get you warm. Luca lit the fire and watched it catch, flames licking up through the kindling. When he finally turned, Isabella was wrapped in a thick blanket, tucked against Francesca's side, and something in his chest cracked at the sight. His daughter, because she was his daughter, no matter what name she was born with, looked smaller than she had in years, fragile, breakable. She used to love this song, Francesca said, not quite looking at him. Sophia sang it every night, said her mother sang it to her, and her mother's mother before that. A family tradition. Don't, Luca started, but Francesca was already humming, low and sweet, a melody that belonged to a different world. The tune was haunting, something old and Italian and full of longing. Francesca's voice strengthened, and she began to sing words Luca didn't understand, some dialect from the old country, from before, witness protection and false names, and murdered wives. Ninna Nanna, Piccola Stella. Lullaby, little star. Isabella's eyes closed, her breathing steadied, and then, so quietly Luca thought he imagined it, a sound emerged from her throat. Not words. Not yet. But a hum, tentative and broken, following the melody like a ghost learning to be solid again. Francesca kept singing, tears streaming down her face, her voice never wavering. Isabella's hum grew stronger, more confident. 5 years of silence cracking like ice in spring. The girl's hand found Francesca's and held tight, and together they made music out of grief and survival and the stubborn refusal to let trauma have the final word. Luca's vision blurred. He tried to stop it, tried to maintain control the way he always did, But it was useless. The tears came hot and fast, and for the first time since the night Sophia died, he let himself break. He slid down the wall and sat on the floor, this man who'd built an empire on violence and fear, and wept like a child while his daughter sang. The lullaby ended, but Isabella kept humming, improvising now, adding her own notes to the melody. It wasn't speech, but it was sound. It was voice. It was the first real proof that she was still in there, still fighting, still alive in ways that mattered. Francesca looked at him over Isabella's head, her own face wet with tears, and mouthed 2 words. She's back. Not all the way. Not yet. But the door had opened, just a crack, and light was spilling through. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling through the pines. Somewhere in the darkness, Matteo Conti was hunting them. But here, in this moment, in this cabin that smelled of cedar and second chances, they had something he couldn't touch. They had hope. And sometimes, Luca thought as he watched his daughter hum a lullaby her mother once sang, hope was the most dangerous weapon of all. Dawn broke cold and grey over the pine trees, and Luca stood on the cabin's porch with a cup of black coffee that had gone cold in his hands. He'd been awake all night, watching the tree line, thinking through angles and outcomes and the mathematics of survival. Running was a temporary solution. Matteo had the resources, the manpower, the connections. He could wait them out, starve them out, hunt them down eventually. And worse, every hour Luca spent hiding was an hour Matteo consolidated power, turned the family against him, rewrote the narrative into something where Luca was the traitor and Matteo the righteous avenger. No. Running was losing in slow motion. He heard the door open behind him, felt Francesca's presence before she spoke. "You're planning something stupid," she said. "I'm planning something necessary." Luca took a sip of the cold coffee, grimaced. "There's a family meeting tonight. Emergency session. Matteo will have called it, probably claimed I've gone rogue. That I'm compromised. He'll be making his play for leadership. So you're going to walk into a room full of men who might want you dead. I'm going to walk into a room full of men who deserve the truth." He turned to face her. Matteo's been patient, but he's exposed now. He had to move too fast, too messy. The attack on my home, that breaks every rule we have. Family doesn't attack family on their own ground. The others will have questions. Francesca studied him with those sharp eyes that saw too much. "And if they side with him? Then I die, and you take Isabella somewhere far away and keep her safe." He said it matter-of-factly, like discussing the weather. "But I don't think they will. Matteo's smart, but he's arrogant. He's been the power behind my throne so long, he thinks he is the throne. He'll make mistakes. This is insane. This is the only play I have left." Luca set down the coffee cup. "I can't protect her from hiding. I can't rebuild from exile. I have to cut the head off the snake, and the snake is going to be in the palazzo tonight at 8, surrounded by the entire family council. Then I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. I'm the only other witness to what happened that night," Francesca said, her voice steel-wrapped in silk. "I can testify to what Isabella told me, what Sophia told me before she died. You walk in there alone. It's your word against his. You walk in with me. You have corroboration. You walk in with me. You die. Then we die together." She crossed her arms. "You don't get to make this call, Luca. I didn't spend 5 years in hiding and risk everything to come back, just to sit in a cabin while you throw yourself on a grenade. Isabella needs both of us. She needs her father, and she needs someone who remembers her mother." Luca wanted to argue, to command, to to pull rank like he did with everyone else in his world. But Francesca wasn't everyone else. She was Sophia's sister, which meant she had that same stubborn core of iron disguised as softness. "If I bring you, they'll know we're desperate," he said finally. "It shows my hand. If you bring me, they'll know you're telling the truth. It shows you have nothing to hide." She stepped closer. "And Isabella stays here with Marco and 2 of your most trusted men. The ones who weren't at the house last night, who Matteo doesn't own. We give her a radio, teach her the emergency protocol. If things go wrong, they run." It was a terrible plan. It was also the only plan that had a chance of working. Inside the cabin, Isabella was still sleeping, curled under blankets by the dying fire, her face peaceful in a way it hadn't been in 5 years. She'd hummed herself to sleep, and the sound had been the most beautiful and heartbreaking thing Luca had ever heard. "I need to end this," he said quietly. "Not for me, for her, so she can speak without fear, so she can have a life that isn't defined by what she saw. Then let's end it." Francesca's hand found his shoulder, squeezed once. Together. Luca looked at her, this woman who'd appeared like a ghost from the past and upended everything, and made a decision that would either save them all or destroy them. "We leave at 6, he said. "Wear black. And Francesca, if things go wrong, you run. You don't look back. You don't hesitate. You get to Isabella, and you disappear." She didn't promise. They both knew she wouldn't run. The palazzo wasn't a palace anymore, but a converted warehouse in the industrial district, all exposed brick and steel beams, where the family conducted business away from prying eyes. Luca and Francesca arrived at 7:45, early enough to control the narrative, late enough that the others would already be assembled. 13 men sat around the long table, faces Luca had known for decades, soldiers, captains, consiglieres. And at the head of the table, in what should have been Luca's seat, sat Matteo Conti, looking every inch the king he'd always wanted to be. "Luca!" Matteo's smile was all teeth. "I wasn't sure you'd come. After your unfortunate breakdown, your attack on your own home." "My attack?" Luca's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Interesting revision of events, Matteo. Tell me, which of these men helped you stage a massacre at my estate last night?" Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Luca saw doubt flickering in familiar eyes. "You're delusional," Matteo said smoothly. "Grief has broken you, old friend. Everyone knows you've been unstable since Sophia died. And now, bringing this woman," he gestured dismissively at Francesca, "some nobody waitress into our sacred council? You've lost your way." "Her name is Francesca Bianchi," Luca said. "Sophia's sister. The woman you thought you'd scared into permanent hiding 5 years ago." Matteo's smile never wavered, but something flickered behind his eyes. Recognition. Calculation. Fear. "I don't know what fairy tale she's sold you. The fairy tale where you murdered my wife and threatened my daughter into silence." Luca's hand moved toward his jacket, but 3 of Matteo's men were faster, weapons appearing like magic. "The fairy tale where a little girl saw a man with a spider tattoo on his neck. The tattoo you covered with a lion 3 days after the fire. Everyone knows I got that lion. Remove your shirt," Luca said quietly. "Show them your neck. Prove me wrong." The warehouse went silent. Matteo's face remained calm, but his right hand drifted toward his belt. "This is ridiculous. Show them." Luca took a step forward, and guns cocked all around him. He was outmanned, outgunned, and rapidly running out of time. "Or I will." Matteo stood slowly, and Luca saw the decision being made behind those cold eyes. No more pretense, no more patience. You should have killed the girl when you had the chance, Matteo said, and his gun cleared the holster first. The world exploded into chaos. Luca dove behind the table as shots rang out, wood splintering around him. The family scattered, some drawing weapons, others hitting the floor. Decades of alliances fracturing in real time. Francesca was down behind a pillar, alive but pinned. Then Luca heard it. The warehouse door crashing open, and a voice he'd thought might stay silent forever. "Stop!" Everyone froze. Isabella stood in the doorway, Marco behind her looking stricken, and in her hand was the radio Luca had left her. Her face was white with terror, but her eyes blazed with 5 years of trapped fury. Matteo's gun swung toward her. "You should have stayed quiet, little girl." It was Matteo. The words erupted from Isabella like a dam breaking, raw and ragged and real. "He killed my mother. I saw him. I saw the spider. I saw you." The distraction cost Matteo everything. His eyes flickered to the girl for half a heartbeat, and Luca moved. The shot was clean. Center mass. Matteo's gun clattered to the concrete as he dropped, blood spreading beneath him in a dark pool. He looked up at Luca with something like respect in his dying eyes. "Took you long enough," he whispered. And then he was gone. 3 months later, the dining table in the new Romano house was loud with life. Isabella sat beside Francesca, chattering about her art class, about the therapist she saw twice a week, about the boy at school who'd asked her to the dance. Her voice still had a rough quality, like vocal cords remembering how to work, but it was beautiful. God, it was beautiful. Luca watched from the head of the table, Francesca's hand in his, and felt something he'd forgotten existed. Peace. "Papa," Isabella said, catching his eye, "are you even listening?" "Every word, little star," he said, and meant it. Outside, the city hummed with its usual violence and treachery, but here, in this house filled with laughter and second chances and hard-won healing, the Romano family was finally home. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the story, hit that like button and subscribe for the next story.